I want to thank everyone for being here today, and especially for the support that I received from all of you in many levels, academically and more intimately. I wanted to thank you. Today I have actually prepared a PowerPoint with some things that I wanted to talk about. Unfortunately, it was not saved correctly, and so it will not appear. So I'm going to go just from memory and from some of the things that I've been thinking about these last couple days as I've been preparing for this lecture. First of all, I want to ask, we are accustomed here at the university to learn in a certain way, to learn in very scientific ways. And we have a very long history and heritage in very rational or scientific ways of learning. I want to talk a little bit today about other ways of knowing and learning things, and how the International Study Programs Office and the experience I've had abroad have helped me understand and validate other ways of learning. Especially, I think we're blessed at this university, at Brigham Young University, to be here and to really consider that there are other ways of learning. In the scriptures, we learn that we should learn by reading, out of the best books, and also by faith. I think that's in Doctrine and Covenants, section 88. And so we focus most of the time on learning from the great books, from the good books. And I wanted to consider some of the other ways of learning through faith, through other methods that I've been in contact with through my experiences as a researcher and as a student in my adventure through education. I'd like to ask you some questions. First of all, how do we know about the process of photosynthesis? Anybody? Let's see, who's in science? Dan Baer. How did you know about the process of photosynthesis?
Through classes, things that were learned through research.
Okay. So learning through research, through classes, through reading, through instruction. Yes.
I remember a nice little diagram. It was probably when I was in elementary school, maybe in middle school or junior high, but it was colorful, and the plants and the sun was up there, and the soils and the water and everything was arrows going around.
It's the visual aspect.
Yeah, I didn't get it from plants really. I got it more from that chart.
Good. So this is a way we learn about photosynthesis. What about how do we learn about electrical light and how we receive that electrical light? Kind of the same way. How do we learn about having the sun come up tomorrow? How do we know that will happen? We're very used to the methods of reading it and seeing it visually, but how do we really know that the sun will come up tomorrow? And that delves into other ways of knowing, other ways of understanding things and learning. How do you know you're a student? Tristan?
My teachers make it very clear.
Okay, your teachers make it clear. Yep, there's this relationship established within the system. Other comments? Yes, Dr. Egan?
Your teachers are also students.
Teachers are also students. And so that's an important way of understanding one's own identity too. How do you know that you're a sibling? Adriana, how do you know that you are a sister to someone?
The way that the relationships that you have with your siblings, the way that they refer to you, the names that they call you, the things you do together, there's kind of like a behavioral patterns.
Okay, behavioral patterns, the way that you're referred to and talked, the language that we use. Okay, good. How do we know that we are spiritual beings? That also delves into other ways of knowing, other ways of learning and understanding. And so today I want to talk about these things. And I'm going to use my research to help me illustrate how other ways of knowing are also valid and are important. And I want to share a couple things. Hugh B. Brown, when he was counselor to the first presidency in the late 60s, early 70s. He said some very, I think, important things about learning, about thinking, and he says, while I believe all that God has revealed, I am not quite sure that I understand what He has revealed. The fact that He has promised further revelation is to me a challenge to keep an open mind and to be prepared to follow whatever my search for truth may lead. And so my search for truth has taken me to other places, other countries, other lands, other languages, other contexts, other relationships, other ways of knowing and understanding. And it's important to keep, as we go in the journey of looking for truth and understanding, to keep that journey, keep our minds open in that journey. We must never, Hugh B. Brown says, our revealed truth should leave us stricken with the knowledge of how little we really know. And I think that's very interesting. Dr. Egan mentioned she is still a student. And as we learn more, we realize how little we know. And so as professors continue learning, and as we as students continue learning, we understand there's much more to learn. And it should never, this knowledge should never lead us to an emotional arrogance based upon a false assumption that we somehow have all the answers, that we in fact have a corner on the truth, for we do not. And so I learned from my experiences in Guatemala, at BYU Hawaii, with people from other cultures, and in California, in Southern California. My experiences returning to my native land in Argentina. And I've noticed that there are some primordial elements that help me understand and know in a way that's different maybe from coming to school and coming to university. One is language, the other place, kinship, intuition or inspiration, dreams, and relationships. First is language. I remember returning to Argentina, I was probably about 10. I came to the U.S. when I was about 7, and we would regularly return to Argentina. And I remember one of those trips, I entered the airplane and I could hear people speaking in Argentine Spanish. And I don't know, my heart swelled, and I felt a really strong connection with the sound I was listening to, because I felt identified with it. That language, that accent of the language represented all these other things, represented the land I came from, the relationships I had back home, the history that my people, my ancestors went through. And so this was a way of knowing of my place in the world. And I didn't have to really study grammar about Spanish language or anything. I just felt that. Later on, as I studied linguistics, I began to understand the importance of language and how that kind of shapes the way we see the world and how we experience it. And so when I went to Guatemala, I was able to do some research on Quiché language. We stayed a number of months in a highland town in the department of Sololá in Guatemala. It's one of There are very few completely indigenous municipalities, and this was one of them, a very strongly Maya community, Quiché Maya community. And I began to learn the language. And I started to learn, and I'm grateful that I was able to learn Quiché because it allowed me to understand other ways of knowing and validate these other ways of knowing. For example, the way to express that you like something, you have to express it through the way you experience it. In English, we say, I like it. Okay. In Spanish, you can say, me cae bien. It falls well with me. There's another way, or me gusta. In Quiché, you have to say, utskin will, or utskin ta. It says, I see it good or well. I see it, I listen or hear it well. Utskin na, I feel it well. Yeah, those are the main senses that are used. And so if I really like the tree, I have to verify that it's the visual aspect that I like of it. Utskin will. But if the tree gives a beautiful or an appealing, a good fragrance, a pleasant fragrance, then I can say utskin na the le riche, riwachuche. And so I began to learn that there are other ways of understanding the world, and they're valid. There are good ways of understanding and learning. And that's something that we can do here at this university, involving the spiritual aspects. In President Lee talked about rational ways of learning and extra-rational ways of learning. And I hope maybe we can find another way for extra-rational. Rational ways of learning would be like what? Any examples? I'd like some of your input. Like we talked about, like deductive reasoning, inductive reasoning, okay, rational. What would be extra-rational? Yes. Intuitive, revelation, inspiration. And we have that blessing to be at this university that should embrace these two ways of learning and of knowing things. Okay. I'm going to share with you one of the presentations I did on Paraíso Maya. And as I present this paper, I want you to think about language, about place, and how place is an important element in knowing and understanding, about relationships and kinship and intuition. A loud banging on the door woke me up. I lay on my bed, startled. Trying to orient myself to the unfamiliar surroundings was difficult. We had come to the highlands of Guatemala to do ethnographic field work for 3 months. The banging finally stopped, and I could hear someone calling Curtis's name. It was Fulgencio Tzep, and he sounded drunk. Curtis went to the door, and Fulgencio began to mumble, cry, and yell in Spanish and Quiche, intermingling the two languages. It was hard to make out what he was saying, but he seemed upset about having to leave Santa Catarina Ixtahuacan. 3 weeks earlier, Hurricane Mitch passed through Santa Catarina Ixtahuacan in 1998, and left the town damaged, much like the storm Stan has done this last month. The verdict was to leave the municipal town, and relocate to a place nicknamed Alaska, for its cold weather and high altitude. Fulgencio kept talking. It reminded me of the week before during the annual festivities of the patron saint of the town. Drinking is customary in this town. One night, I saw Fulgencio drunk and upset about the relocation issue. In slurred speech, I heard him say, "Soy indio, soy indígena." ¿Sí o no? Where's my... Okay. This is not it. Okay. We'll just leave it to the pictures. Okay. So he said, "I am Indian. I am indigenous. Yes or no?" Then he forcefully, in a forceful tone, yelled out, "Me voy a la mierda, Alaska. I'm going to hell, to Alaska." This night he seemed even sadder. Curtis and Miguel, a man from the house, tried to get him to leave the house. As Fulgencio left, his voice cracked and he started to cry uncontrollably. In between his weepings, he said, "Soy de Ixtahuacan. No me quiero ir de Ixtahuacan. Me voy a morir en Ixtahuacan. I am from Ixtahuacan. I don't want to leave Ixtahuacan. I will die in Ixtahuacan." What was happening to Fulgencio? Why was he suffering? Why was he reaffirming his Indianness? Why did the prospects of a relocation, what did it mean to him? What did it mean to his identity? How would this relocation affect his notions of being Maya and his identity? Fulgencio exemplifies the conflicts that many Maya are confronting in a world of constant flow and change. Although Antigua Ixtahuacan is geographically isolated, it is very much part of the global flows of people, technology, capital, images, and ideas common to what Arjun Appadurai identifies as globalization. The flows of these elements are questioning the traditional dichotomies of identity in Guatemala. These dichotomies are constructed in oppositions of Maya, Ladino, rural, urban, agriculturalist, professional, traditional, and modern. Are these binary identity structures appropriate for Guatemala today? How are the Maya of Ixtahuacan defining who they are? Which ways are they using to understand this? Are they using rational, extra-rational? And even the word extra-rational places rational in a higher status of hierarchy. And so I hope, I don't know, maybe you guys can give me another term for the non-rational. Or see, even when you say non-rational, it places those ways of learning below. And so we need to think about these things. And I'm sure many philosophers and scholars have thought about it. I'm just coming in contact with it and learning about it, which is great. My first week in Ixtahuacan was spent getting to know the family I would live with for the next 3 months and talking about my proposed research topic, education. I went to the municipal school district office and they suggested I go with a teacher to a workshop on educational reform in Quetzaltenango that very week. So I went straight to work that same week I got there. It was the Maya New Year, and as the conference began, a teacher native to Tactic, Alta Verapaz, started by acknowledging and thanking Rukushkach Rukushuleu, heart of sky, heart of earth. We faced the 4 cardinal points, and she prayed in Pocomchi. It was clear that this conference was to be framed within certain essential themes of Mayan culture. The participants were school teachers and administrators from different municipalities, Huehuetenango, Sololá, El Quiché, Chimaltenango, Izabal, and so on. They were all part of the Association of Mayan Educational Centers. At this center, at this conference, I realized the important role education was playing in defining Mayan identity and the current global context Guatemala finds itself in. The following quote summarizes the consensus by this group of educators on the role of education in Guatemalan society. They said, "Education should prepare us for societies that don't exist yet, but we should work towards their existence." Considering the disjunctive global flows of influences into a traditional town like Santa Catarina, Ixtahuacan, and the perceived role of education in this community, I began to look at Instituto Paraíso Maya and how it serves as a catalyst for redefining Mayan identity and ways of knowing that identity. So, Instituto Paraíso Maya is part of the globalization and localization processes that are redefining what it means to be Maya in Santa Catarina, Ixtahuacan. The motivations for creating this educational institute are revitalistic. The goals, curriculum, and teaching methods reflect the current patterns of redefining identity, of other ways of knowing. These patterns take the global flows present in Ixtahuacan and localize them, framing Mayan identity pertinent in the current community, national, and global realities of Ixtahuaqueños, thus creating and recreating the modern Maya, as I call it. Globalization cannot exist without its corollary, localization. Localization is the process of appropriating different influences and indigenizing them. Globalization and localization in Ixtahuacan is understood best by utilizing a very prominent cultural symbol of the cot. And this was really neat. As I learned, I tried to apply their way of understanding and knowing their current context and where they fit. The cot, this symbol, is a mythical bicephalous bird. It's an important symbol in Ixtahuacan. It is seen woven in the textiles and the traditional blouses worn by all the women in the town. Every woman wears a traditional blouse with the cot, this symbolic bicephalous bird, a bird with 2 heads. It was explained to me that the cot signifies the importance of looking back in history, one of the heads, culture and tradition, to understand the present and the future. Or in the words of Martín Kahn, aprendemos que para ver correctamente nuestra realidad debemos tener 2 visiones. O sea, debemos ver el pasado para poder corregir el futuro. So he says, we learn that to correctly see our reality today, we have to have 2 visions. we must see the past to correctly see the future. There are certain essential themes of Mayan culture, in the past. These are instrumental in helping make sense of the present future flows of people, technology, capital, images, and ideas. In Ixtahuacan, identity is a constantly changing cultural construct, but constrained to Mayan cultural themes that change at a slower pace. This is according to Edward Fisher, and I found that is true. And I think I identify to a lot of these things. As I experience this research, I started to identify with these ethnic and cultural issues. As being a Latino in the U.S., being Argentine, I found myself relating to some of these issues that the Maya were dealing with. The relationship between these cultural themes and the contemporary global flows can be understood through revitalization. Anthony Wallace explains that revitalization is not simply a process of reasserting the viability of the earlier cultural forms. Rather, it is a self-conscious cultural resynthesis in the face of extraordinary pressure and conflict. When older models no longer orient people in the increasingly unstable social environment, competing formulations, visionary inspirations, charismatic leaders, and cultural hybrids are part of the process of revitalization before the politics of institutionalization take over and routinizes or standardizes the outcome. I take ideas from these theories to help understand Instituto Pariso Maya's role in the community. And I'm going to try and see if I can make this work. I think I'm going the wrong way. Okay, I use the typical methodology to try to research these topics: informal interviews, structured interviews, surveys, observations, participant observations. I think the most meaningful to me were the participant observation experiences that I had. Not only because I was able to gain knowledge and be able to write it down and observe certain things, but because I was able to enter into the realm of other ways of knowing and understanding. Getting the feeling of what it means to be Maya, the conflicts of modernity and modernization in Guatemala, and how they are dealing with these things, and how that applies to my experience in the United States and dealing with my personal identities here in the United States as a Latino. In the early 1990s, community, let's see if I have I keep pressing the wrong button. Okay, we had that. Okay. In the early 1990s, community leaders gathered to discuss the current education their children were receiving. They were not satisfied with the national educational system that attempted to Castilianize the indigenous population and disregard their cultures and languages and ways of knowing. So this very Western educational system was coming into indigenous communities and kind of forcing the new language, and that includes the new ways of learning and understanding the world. And so the parents and the community leaders said, no, we have our way of knowing things and understanding the world. These parents wanted their children to value the Quiche language. They wanted their children to better understand the value their Mayan ideology and cosmovision gave them. They feared homogenization. They wanted to reassert the viability of earlier cultural forms. To achieve this, they chose to use formal education, which is a non-traditional way of learning, but they chose to use it as a new model or instrument that was not traditionally part of the Maya world. Education among... What's going on here? It's going crazy. Okay. We'll have it black here. Education among the Quiche Mayas is today a symbol of modernity. And so in Ixtahuacan, it became a product of cultural resynthesis. This is due to the constant flows of influences entering Ixtahuacan. Traditionally, formal education fell within the parameters of the Ladino, the non-indigenous world. Being Maya meant working the milpa, bringing in firewood, not being lazy, being a good worker. Being Ladino meant having a government job, speaking Spanish, going to school. One day I accompanied Fulgencio to get some firewood. And Fulgencio is currently a primary teacher at a small hamlet in the municipality of Ixtahuacan. He as we walked, Fulgencio proudly showed me his family's land. He related to me how, when he was younger, he would regularly come to clean and work this land. He felt a strong connection with the land. But Fulgencio was now a teacher and didn't have time to work the land. Why did he decide to become a teacher when working the land was so important to being Maya? Well, obviously the contexts were changing in Ixtahuacan, and so he had to adapt to those changes. Yet he kept a close relationship to the land. One day we accompanied him to the small hamlet 6 hours away from we lived, walking up and down the mountains, and we left Tzamchach a little late, and so we were scared that we may not make it in time before dark back to Ixtahuacan. And we didn't because, I felt we had gotten lost because we were following a path all the way back home, and we're following this path. And then Fulgencio says, "Oh, let's follow the river." I'm like, "Okay, let's lead. Go ahead." And we followed the river, and then he started going up this dried up mudslide, and I thought, this is not a path. I was starting to feel lost and worried, and I thought, and I'm all fours, kind of going up this dried up mudslide, and I thought, we're not going to make it back home, and as I just had to trust in Fulgencio's knowledge and his way of understanding what a path means and how to get home. For him, the mountain, that mudslide, he knew where that was. That river was a path for him. He knew where that mountain, the direction, what was surrounding that mountain. He was not fearing being lost. We were. And it was because I had another way of understanding and knowing what a path was or how to get from one direction to another. And so I learned from Fulgencio that he had a very strong connection to the land because he had experienced it. If you go to Guatemala and you look, you're on the Pan American Highway, there aren't very many official bus stops. People just stop on the side of the road. And I was amazed. I thought, coming from a big city where you're taught to always wear shoes and to, we're disconnected with the land. And as I looked down, I'm on the bus, and I looked, and on the side of the road were families that were sitting on the ground, on the earth. And I thought, that shows me their strong connection with that land and how they understand that connection with nature. To them, it's very important to feel that land, to be close to it. And so I learned that is another way of understanding their place in the world. And in relation to modernity and globalization, the school is trying to make sense of this. Let's see. Let's see if this works at all. I can give you just a history. How do I make this show up? There it is. Oh, I need to walk up to it again. No. Okay. Wow. Oh. Okay, well, the Instituto Paraíso Maya was formed to prepare students to become bilingual teachers and to become promoters and technicians with an orientation in the community, in the development of the community, so they can develop their scientific, technical, and occupational skills that will permit them to face and resolve the collective and individual socioeconomic problems that they are currently facing. We see here that the blending. You have very Western ways of knowing, and then if we look at the curriculum of Paraíso Maya, we see that these Western ways of knowing are also included with more Mayan themes and essential elements. When I did a survey and I administered it to Básico students before they entered the Instituto Paraíso Maya, it's kind of like a junior high before entering the high school, and I wanted to see what they perceived this institute to be. And so In a survey I administered to básico students, I asked them to list all the words that came to mind about the Mayan culture. And these were the words that they mentioned. Costumbre, cultivar y cosechar, traje, idioma maya, castellano, garífuna, etnias, ishmucané. These are all like tradition to cultivate the land and harvest it, the dress, the Mayan language, the Spanish language, garífuna, and different ethnicities in Guatemala. Ishmucané is a female deity in the Popol Vuh. Hunahpu, also the fair. Writing and reading in Mayan languages and in Spanish, education, weaving ancestors' land, maize or corn. It was interesting that they included reading and writing and education. So these things are now part of being Maya and part of their new modern identity. The Paraíso Maya curriculum reflects the blending of Mayan cultural themes and the current modern value of education appropriated by Ixtahuaqueños. The curriculum includes courses in Mayan and universal mathematics. The Maya have a rich tradition of mathematics, and they are very adamant about teaching. In fact, it was very difficult to learn how to multiply and divide. You have this grid, and you use the Mayan numeration system, and it's quite complicated, and they can do it really fast. And they're really proud about that they have learned it, because they had lost that information through colonization. It also includes classes in Spanish language, history and cultures of Guatemala, bilingual pedagogy, human development, Quiche language courses, literature, and natural sciences. I'm going to conclude here so I can show you a little bit something that I'm working on now. So about I'm going to conclude about the issue of education in Paraíso Maya. Fulgencio Tzep, the school teacher, worried about the relocation. He was the one that was really distraught about the relocation and his indigenous identity. He, even though he was really distraught about it, he actually became one of the members of the relocation committee, a prominent member of that relocation committee. Why would he become part of a committee that would potentially separate him from those dichotomous Mayan identity markers such as agriculture and land? Were these dichotomous identity markers appropriate for Ixtahuacan now, who desired to be modern and Maya? Like Fulgencio, Ixtahuacan has been reformulating what it means to be Maya. Instituto Paraíso Maya has been an important part of this reformulation of Mayan identity. The motivations of creating this institute were revitalistic, as community leaders used those Mayan cultural themes of the past and appropriate new values to redefine Mayan identity. The motivations, purpose, curriculum, and teaching methods are influenced by the global flows of people, technology, capital, images, and ideas. Ixtahuaqueños have localized their influences, recreating the modern Maya. As the graduates of Instituto Paraíso Maya go out to teach and work with their community in their villages and hamlets, they will transmit this new identity. Because they speak and are Quiche, the children, parents, and community leaders will better relate with them. They are not the Ladinos they previously had to work with, because in Guatemalan educational history, it was the Ladinos that went to the small hamlets to teach. Now they are Maya, but modern Maya, as I have classified here, and as they themselves consider their new identity. Their children will more likely go to school. Parents will become more involved in their children's education and community development. Paraíso Maya graduates will thus facilitate the diffusion of new paradigms that will better prepare the Quiche Maya to face the modern world many want to engage in. Instituto Paraíso Maya is thus functioning as an instrument to help out the global flows in the community. It is preparing the modern Maya to live in a modern and globalized world. From my experiences with Paraíso Maya, I became really close friends with a few of the students who became bilingual teachers. And as they taught, they also had a passion for music. They really loved music. And they had been influenced by music from different genres, different times, different countries. But they wanted to express their identity and their current social context with music. And so they formed a group called Cabawil. And remember the cot that I talked about? The cot is the bird, and Cabawil is the ideology. Cab is two, il is to see, and so there's two visions. It means two visions. And so I worked with them, and that's what my current focus is in my graduate program in communications. I want to look at how this new media interacts with the identity formations of youth, of Maya youth. And so what I worked with them a couple years ago on a website. And I want to show that to you and kind of open it up to questions and comments and kind of give, hopefully I can get some ideas about which direction to go with my master's thesis. So I don't know if I could get some help with this technology sometimes. Okay, here we go. No. How do you do this? There we go. End show. Then we go to slideshow. Is that how no, that's not the one I want. Right click. How do I open the other? Does anyone know?
Is that a whole other file?
Yeah, it's another file.
There you go.
Is that it?
Very good.
Okay. We worked on this this website. I actually was just an instrument. We got together and discussed some things, and these are the things that they wanted to talk about and show. This is the website so that the world can know about who they are and what they're doing. How they began, a little bit of the history. In 1997, they talk an important event to Maya in Guatemala was the 1997 peace accords. And that presented the ethnic majority, the Maya, with a validated status in Guatemala. And so since then, in 2001, the group began to meet together and kind of start playing and jamming together. They use modern instruments, and I'll go to instrumentos acá. They use the instruments and rhythms that we play are a mixture of both modern and traditional. Our idea is that that the traditional rhythms and sounds will not be lost. We mix sounds and rhythms, modern sounds and rhythms, with traditional ones to create a new genre of music called rock maya. This way we want to attract the youth of today. So they use electrical guitar and the drums and so forth, the keyboard, but they also use the chirimia, which is this instrument, maraca, zampoñas, marimba, the tortuga, which is the shell of the tortuga, turtle, thank you. And they have very specific purpose. The purpose is to show, is to maintain the culture strong and alive. They do this by giving value to the language, the traditional attire or the traje, the music, the traditions, and the Mayan cosmovision or cosmology. We want to, through the music, we want to attract the youth. We want to sing in our native language, which is Quiche, and to transmit that our culture is alive and it's a rich culture. Okay, and these are some of the to end here, some of the songs that they've been working on. And if you can look at some of the titles here, I've translated them to Spanish actually. Oh, and we actually worked on one. It's translated to English. Let's go back because I want you just to see the themes. You have forgotten heritage, equality, talking about a working mother, the river, nostalgia, about the creator, about the motherland, or the Mother Earth, better said. Giving thanks to a grandfather and to father, themes about the language. These are all very primordial elements that they have chosen to use to help them be rooted with their identity as they have to face the influx of all these other elements because of globalization. So I want you to see how play. I don't know if the sound will work. We'll see. You can read here the translation in Spanish or in English. can hear some of the traditional sounds, but also the guitar, the electric guitar at that. So there's one of the songs, and some of them are a little more upbeat. Others are. This is what they've actually recorded an album. Was it last year? No, 2 years ago was their first album. Oh, do I have to set all this up? Oh no. We'll see. And so this is one of the songs that they've actually recorded, and it's really popular in Ixtahuacan. Last time I was there, we're gonna have some lighting. Yeah. Oh. So this song specifically talks about the language and how language helps the Maya understand who they are. And they say if you are ashamed to speak your language, then you have left it. You are no longer part of it. If you are ashamed to act or behave the way in the path of our culture, you have left it already. And so they talk about our language is the heart of our culture, the heart of our behavior, of how we live, of our lives. It's very important. It is the heart of what we do. And so they take one of the very primordial, and then the music gets going into rock music, which is really cool. They take the very primordial symbol, the language, and this is the way that they start that they are understanding, and how we all understand identity and who we are. To end, I wanted to just give a quote here from Hugh B. Brown's devotional in the 70s. It was very interesting. In the 70s, he was talking about freedom, about thinking, about opening our perspectives, and he talked about. Let's see if I find it. I had it on my. Okay, he says one may memorize much without learning anything, and that can be a crutch in the rational way of knowing things, memorizing things. In this age of speed, in the 1970s, you imagine today, he says, in this age of speed, there seems to be little time for meditation. And so I hope that as we are entering the path or in our journey for learning, that we open our minds to other ways of learning, that we participate in our classes and express our opinions and ask questions, because that is the way we hopefully we can tap into the other way of learning, the spiritual way of learning, which in the end we are spiritual beings in having a temporal experience. Hugh B. Brown says, one of the most important things in the world is freedom of the mind. From this, all other freedoms spring. Such freedom is necessarily dangerous, for one cannot think right without running the risk of thinking wrong. But generally, more thinking is the antidote for the evils that spring from wrong thinking. More thinking is required, and we call upon you students to exercise your God-given right to think through every proposition that is submitted to you, and to be unafraid to express your opinions, with proper respect for those to whom you talk, and proper acknowledgement of your own shortcomings. And I am grateful for my experiences in Guatemala, my experiences with my family, experiences with you, with my fellow classmates and friends and professors, because I've been able to learn from all of you and learn that we have the God-given ability to think and to have other ways of knowing, not just things memorized or given to us for us to memorize, but we can experience things and we can participate in the learning process, in the learning journey.